Hi everyone. How many of you guys are new to this Corda? Can you raise your hand? There is an option, right? Can you raise your hand those who are new to Corda? So, I'm assuming the rest must have, started working on or have gone through Corda. But so let me just tell you one thing that this is very, very, very basic, and today's webinar is going to be very basic, and it's just going to talk about concept just on the higher level, not going in depth also. And so I'm not expecting any technical questions or too much technicality in Corda. So the further session, so we are soon going to start a Corda series that going to in detail go through technicalities of Corda and how to build a Corda app, so applications on Corda. So in the coming webinars you will see that, but today is going to be really basic. So if you guys know the concept, then I mean uh, also of course you can say and listen. We can discuss about it, but it's just for those basically, or targeted to those who are just new and just heard of it, might have heard of it, or just starting out. So yeah, so if you also have any views about how to start off with Corda and how to go about Corda or learning Corda, so you can also put in your tell us your opinion about it, or share your experience with us. So if you want to do that, you can do that. Okay. All right. So let me start with the introduction of our company. So first of all, let me introduce myself. So I'm SANKET RAITURKAR. I'm a blockchain engineer with Snapper Future Tech, and I have worked on POCs and projects in Ethereum, Hyperledger Fabric, and now currently working in Corda. So yeah. So something about our company. Let it get this load. Okay. So today's topic is introduction to Corda. As I mentioned, it's going to be very high level and not going in depth, very short and very to the point, not going in depth. So something about our company, which is Snapper Future Tech. So Snapper has been leading blockchain technology company and innovation startup. So we have been reviewed by CIO and Deep Tech, and awarded by Hong Kong International Blockchain and Financial Association. So we are a blockchain technology and innovation company since 2016. So it's been around 4 years that we are into blockchain. So among the most promising companies in blockchain technology for consecutive 2 years by CIO Review magazine. We are a product and solution across, we build products and solution across healthcare, supply chain, by banking and financial services, and e-governance. And we offer multiple blockchain-based services using Hyperledger and Ethereum platform. So, and now Corda in future. Snapper is a part of NMTech Capital in Houston. So under the NMTech group, there are multiple startups which are into IoT, artificial intelligence, 3D animation, VR, AR, and we are also there in blockchain technology. And the NMTech also consists of engineering services like Premises Company, which is in Pune, and BK Corrosion. And these are the some of awards and endorsement that we have received. And also we are featured in Forbes magazine, CIO, CoinDesk, Times, The Week, The Chronicle, etc. And this is some of the solutions which we have built in supply chain, e-governance, and banking and financials and healthcare. So we are POC on real-time goods traceability, luxury goods authentication, and automated supply chain. In e-governance, we have property records, that is property management and tracking the property ownership of the property. Then we have our POCs on drug traceability and health records, and we are also working in insurance claim. That is why you will see how Corda is important for insurance and other financial use cases. Then we have also worked in certificate authentication. So we have our project called as SnapCert, which is a certificate authentication and verification platform that we they had recently 2 months back in the Hyperledger hackathon. Our platform was used to issue certificates to the participants and winners. So yeah. So that's about our company. So today's topic is Corda. So Corda is by R3. So R3 is a company which has a platform called Corda. So Corda is a distributed ledger platform specially designed for the financial sector. So as I mentioned, Corda is basically primarily designed for financial sectors. So it is an open source platform that can be used to build apps for financial institutions on top of it. So many of the banks or any financial institutes wants to build a blockchain based application. They may use Corda as the platform to build a blockchain application. So it is a permissioned private network designed to record, manage, and synchronize contracts and other shared data between partners. So like Hyperledger, this is also a permissioned private network which records and manages and syncs your data or information in contracts between the parties who are involved in that consortium. So Corda is governed by R3 consortium, which is a collaboration of 70 plus finance institutions. According to R3, Corda is distributed ledger technology and isn't a blockchain. So some people might think, and I also used to think that Corda is also a blockchain. So, but there is no blocks and there is no chaining in Corda. So Corda is not a blockchain. Okay, you will understand what Corda is in the further slides. So let me just put that Corda is not a blockchain, but it is a distributed ledger technology. It uses a distributed ledger technology. So if you are not familiar with other distributed ledger technologies, let me tell you, blockchain is one of the distributed ledger technologies. Then we have Hashgraph as a distributed ledger technology. Then we have Holochain, and there are many distributed ledger technologies. So blockchain is one of them, but Corda is not a blockchain. So let us talk about the network structure in Corda. So communication between nodes is point to point. So we know that in blockchain, it is peer-to-peer communication, but Corda says it is point-to-point. How does it happen? I mean, what is this point-to-point? Where the information is, or nodes? Basically, if you are clear with your fundamentals of blockchain, you know that every peer or every node holds the ledger and they communicate between each other. But whereas in Corda, it is just point-to-point. So how it is point-to-point, we'll see that. So a Corda network is an authenticated peer-to-peer network of nodes. So it is saying that it is peer-to-peer, but the communication is point-to-point. All right. I hope you are getting it. So it's of course it's peer-to-peer in blockchain as well. Other platforms like Hyperledger or Ethereum, it is peer-to-peer. It is same in Corda, but the communication is point-to-point. Okay. So all communication between nodes is direct. So with TLS encrypted messages sent over active MQ protocol. So this AMQP is a communication protocol like what we used to, use that is in the other platforms than Corda, like Gossip protocol. So if you are familiar with Gossip protocol, it is not used here in Corda. They use active MQ protocol, that is AMQP protocol. This means that data is shared only on the need to know basis. So in Corda, there is no global broadcast. So in other blockchain, the information or data is broadcasted globally. So it to every peer in the network. So that is sharing of facts across all the nodes in the network. But in Corda, it's not the case. The Corda is, as I mentioned, point to point. The parties involved in the transaction, for example, let's say party A and party B is doing some transaction, and there are multiple. There is, let's say, party C in the same network, but the transaction is between party A and party B. So the information about the transaction will only be with party A and party B. So party C will not have any information regarding that transaction because it is point to point and it is not globally broadcasting that information. All right. So yeah. So each network has a network map service that publishes the IP addresses through which every node on the network can be reached, along with the identity certificates of those nodes and services they provide. So if you guys are familiar with Fabric or any blockchain network, the network mapping is it is mapped to your IP address. So it's not the case in public blockchain. So it's in the permission blockchain that you can map your services with the IP address of your node. Okay, so every node in the network obviously will have an IP address. So through the IP address, the nodes can communicate with each other. And the identity certificates are also generated. So if you are familiar with Fabric, so there is a concept called certificate authority. That certificate authority provides a certificate to the nodes so that it can take part in the transactions in the network. So similarly in Corda also there is something called as certificates, and identity certificates are given to the nodes and so that they can provide the services in the network. So let us see who gives that certificates. So in Fabric, they are called as certificate authorities or Fabric CA, or there are tools called CryptoGen, which is used to generate the certificates for the nodes. But here in Corda, we have something called as the doorman. So to join the network, a node must contact the doorman and provide the required information. So if the doorman is satisfied, as we all know, it is a permission blocking, so you ask for the permission. So if the domain is satisfied, the node will receive a root authority signed TLS certificate from the network permissioning service. So this service this certificate certifies the node's identity when communicating with the other participants on the network. So as I said that to uh, to communicate between the network, the nodes require some certificate to take part in the transactions or do any transactions on the network. So this doorman provides with the certificate so that you can do any transaction or communicate with the other participants on the network. All right. So ledger. So ledger, of course, if you are familiar with blockchain, you are familiar with the ledger, what ledger is. So in Corda, there is no single central store of data. So instead, each node maintains a separate database of known facts. So if you know that what is ledger in the blockchain, so in blockchain or in the public blockchain, or let's say, as we all know that Corda is not a blockchain. So, but in blockchain, every node has the same ledger, is the same copy of the ledger. With there is the same copy is held by every node in the network. But Corda is it's not the same case. But so each node maintains a separate database of known facts. So if the two parties share one fact, so those only two parties will have that fact data into their database. All right. So as a result, each peer only sees a subset of facts on the ledger, and no peer is aware of the ledger in its entirety. So no peer or no node will have the entire ledger with himself or with him, and the subset of the facts, that means the transactions which they are part of, that only information or information about their transaction will be stored with them. All right. So far, do we have any questions?
Yeah, I have one question here.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So in Corda, so there is no endorsing endorsing orders, committing orders does not exist like
Yes,
Hyperledger,
there is one. There is one. I have not come there yet.
because always it's point to communication, right? Because
But
that ledger
consensus
is
has
not
to
shared with.
happen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you are talking about the consensus part, I suppose.
Yes, I'm
Yes.
talking about a consensus, because
Yes.
here always communicating private data channel only, right? So
That
there is no uh, this
Of
ledger is
course.
not
So
shared.
there is distributed ledger technology and consensus has to be there. So yes, I will come to that part
Okay,
about
thank
consensus.
you.
So far about any doorman or network structure or ledger, do we have any doubts about it? About
No, the doorman concept or gateway concept to add new organizations to the network makes sense. Given the separate ledgers that everybody maintains, I'm guessing that aggregation on the total network is difficult.
Sorry, I didn't get your question. What are you saying?
If you're trying to run an aggregation query on the, I'll call it activity on the total network,
Yeah.
that would be difficult, I assume.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, it would be, and so being point to point, that would increase the speed of the transaction also. So I suppose yes.
Yeah, thanks.
So let's go ahead. So if you have any other doubts, you can type it in the chat. Mhm. So let's come to states. So there is one concept called a state. So we all know that what a state is. I mean, state is a current state or a historic state. So states represent on the on ledger sets. So states are evolved by marking the current state as historic and creating an updated state. So that means when a transaction is done, it is if the transaction is valid, it is stored on that ledger as a fact, and it is the current transaction. Okay, let's say it's transaction one. So when we do a transaction two, so that transaction one becomes a historic transaction, and that transaction two, if it is a valid transaction, it is stored inside on the ledger, and it is the current state of the ledger. Okay, so each node has a vault. It's something called as vault, where all the transactions are stored. And so each node has a vault where it stores any relevant states to itself. So the vault stores the states of the transaction. So as you can see in the diagram, so the first transaction, that is Alice owes Bob 10 pounds. So that is one transaction. So Bob has Alice owes Bob. So Bob has given some money to Alice owes. Yeah. So Bob has given some money to Alice, and Alice has to pay back the money in the first transaction. So in the second transaction, Alice has paid £5. So that is a second transaction, and it is a current state. All right. So in contract, so there is contract in everywhere. So there is smart contracts in Ethereum, there is chain code in Hyperledger, and there is contract in Corda as well. So a valid transaction must be accepted by the contract of each of its input and output states. So contracts are written in JVM programming languages, and contract execution is deterministic, and its acceptance of transaction is based on the transactions contents alone. So you can write your contracts in Java or Kotlin. So Corda supports only JVM based programming language, that is Java or Kotlin. So yeah, so contract constraints. So every state on the ledger contains the fully qualified class name of a contract implementation and also a constraint. So this constraint specifies which version of the application can be used to provide the named class when the transaction is built. So the transaction states specify a constraint over the contract that will be used to verify it. So for a transaction to be valid, the verify function associated with each state must run successfully. So in the smart contract or the contract, there is a function written as a verify. So that after that function is run successfully, then the state changes. All right. So a transaction is a transactions a proposal to update the ledger. So whenever a client application, let's say, submits some form, so that is a transaction proposal sent to the network. So a transaction proposal will only be committed. So transactions will be only committed if it doesn't contain the double spends. So if that same similar type of transaction is not done earlier, so then only the transaction will be committed. So that does not, I mean, doesn't have to be a double spend. So there shouldn't be a double spending of it is contractually valid. So in the contract, if the written conditions are valid, then only the transaction will be committed, and it is signed by the required parties. So as I mentioned, there is a doorman who has given the certificates to the nodes, and if they are not signed by the the required parties or the nodes which are part of that network, then it will not be committed. So Corda uses a UTXO, that is unspent transaction output model, where every state on the ledger is immutable. So if you are familiar how Bitcoin works, so Bitcoins uh, work on a UTXO model, that is unspent transaction output model. Okay, so every state on the ledger is immutable. So you can see how much spent transactions are there and how much, what is the output. So it's based on input and output of the transaction. So what are flows? So flows is very important part in Corda. Flows automate the process of agreeing ledger updates. So Corda network uses point-to-point messaging instead of global broadcast. So this means that coordinating a ledger update requires network participant to specify exactly what information needs to be sent to which counterparty and in what order. So cord in the flows coordinate with the ledger update and which is required by the network participant to specify what exact information needs to be sent. So what asset or the information regarding the asset needs to be sent to the counterparties. For example, that if a party A wants to send a vehicle to the party B, so that information about the vehicle needs to be sent to the counterparties, and that is the information about that transaction is written inside the flow. So let me tell you that you do not write if you have worked in Fabric. So the Fabric mostly it is handled by the network. There is whole network architecture and the whole Fabric network infrastructure. But in Corda, there is no network as such. So you have to write contract, you have to write states, you have to write flow. So you have to write logic for all these three, and the network part is very, I mean, limited. So you just create the number of nodes and you create something called as Notary. Okay, I'll come to that. So what I wanted to say is, if you have worked on Fabric or Ethereum, not even Ethereum, but Fabric, most of the parts is on the network, where the development or writing the smart contract is one part. It's just one part where you write the chain code. But in here, we write the contract also, where the validity of that agreement is checked. We write the states where whenever you do a transaction, there has to be a state change, like asset transfer, maybe the transfer of ownership, transfer of tangible or intangible assets. And there is this flow that the information about that asset has to be verified and has to be checked and sent to the counterparties or the parties who are involved in the transaction. So this is all that you have to write using Java or Kotlin. So information or you must be familiar with core Java or Kotlin. So whereas in Fabric, you just need to know one language. You may know one language, that is Go, in which it is written Go, and chain code is also written in Go, but it's not the case. So basically, I am comparing this with Fabric because I have worked on this, I mean, Fabric for around 2 years. So when I started learning, also I start comparing with this the platform which I learned earlier. So if you are familiar with that, you will understand. If not, that is fine. So about the consensus. So somebody had asked how does that consensus happen? So to be committed, transaction must achieve both validity and uniqueness consensus. So validity consensus requires contractual validity of the transaction and all its dependencies, that this is checked by each required signer before they sign the transaction. So a uniqueness consensus prevents double spend. This is only checked by a notary service. So there is someone called as notary, which checks the double spend where all the consensus happens. So Notary is a cluster which prevents double spending. As Corda is working in on the UTXO model, it does not have to avoid this double spending problem. So notary clusters are also time stamping authorities. If a transaction includes a time window, it can only be notarized during that window. So notary cluster are basically who do time stamping. So in blockchain, if you are familiar with the fundamentals, the time stamping is also very crucial and important part for a transaction. So there has to be a time stamping for uh, checking what time the transaction has committed or happened. If a transaction includes a time window, there is something called as time window concept in Corda that we are not going to talk about today. So it can only be notarized during that window. Notary clusters may optionally also validate transactions, in which case they are called validating notaries as opposed to non-validating. So notary clusters may optionally also validate, that means sign the transaction, in which they are also called as validating notaries. So you could have a pool of notaries, that is multiple notaries for a network, okay, for the nodes which are or parties which are involved in the network. So a network can have several notary clusters, each running on a different consensus algorithm. So you could have a multiple pool of notaries or multiple notary clusters which they run a different consensus algorithm. So the consensus algorithms involved in Corda are BFT and Raft. So you can use BFT and Raft in Corda for notaries for consensus mechanism. So Oracle, so a fact can be included in a transaction as a part of command. And Oracle is a service that will only sign the transaction if the included fact is true. So in many cases, a transaction's contractual validity depends on some external piece of data, such as current exchange rate. So in the network, Oracle acts as some external part, as a Oracle node, which gets its data from an external server kind of thing, or a sensor, like they have mentioned the exchange rate. So it will take the exchange rate from some exchanges. So it is kind of taking some external piece out of the network, like let's say information about the weather or a climate. So it could be taken from a sensor and fed the data into this Oracle node. So it is taking some information outside the network from an external party. A node. So a node is a JVM runtime with unique network identity running the Corda software. So the node has two interfaces with the outside world, a network layer for interacting with the other nodes, and a remote procedure call or RPC for interacting with the node's owner. So the node's functionality is extended by installing Corda in the plugin registry. So there is something called as, so I hope you get what a node is. A node is a node with every network, blockchain network is a node, and it does the same thing. So instead of permission networks are better suited for financial use cases. So this Corda, as I mentioned, that it is best suited for financial use cases. So point-to-point communication allows information to be shared on need-to-know basis. So as I mentioned, the shared need-to-know basis means if the two parties are involved in a transaction, and if there are, let's say, five total parties in the network, so and only these two parties need to do a transaction, so that the other parties in the network need not know or need not have that information with them unless they want to share it. So it is need to know basis. So a UTXO model allows for more transactions per second. So in here in Corda, the UTXO model allows transaction per second. Also, the factor of having point to point and not globally broadcasting the transaction also saves times, and it also increases the throughput or transaction per second. So yeah, so for today's session or today's webinar, we will stop here. Okay, and we shall continue next time. So do you have any questions? I mean, not going into technical.
The concepts you gave us were really, I'll call it central to Corda, which is great. So that was very helpful in the comparisons to Fabric.
Yes, thank you, Sanya. So we will, I mean, more technical. I have not added much because this is very introductory and very, as I mentioned earlier before the webinar, it is going to be very basic. And if someone has gone through that, it will be a very basic for him or her. So yes, but in future, it's going to be a technical and at the perspective of a developer. So, like for example, in Hyperledger and all, there are roles defined, right? For a developer, is there? Then there is a network administrator, or architect is a network administrator is there. So, but in Corda, there is just developer. So there is not much role of a network administrator or someone needs. We do not require this separate role to administer a network. So a developer is only one who is developing the entire application. So there is just one role here, that is we need to write flows, states, and contract. So that was just to give us overview or just basic information about Coda so that people could just start off or just start reading about it. So that was the purpose of this webinar. So any other basic questions you have? All right, so let me read the chat. Okay. 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 Is Corda for developing supply chain application. You can use there are people who are working in supply chain and using Corda for that, but Corda's intention was to do it for financial use cases. But you can also build supply chain if your use case is, you need to study that use case and what you exactly want to make a decentralized, which part you want to make decentralized, and what information you want to store on the ledger. So yeah, you need to work it out and see what is good for you. You can use, but can you explain about the transaction? Okay. So a transaction flow in Corda is basically when a client application sends the transaction proposal, it will go to a node in Corda, and a node which needs to be part of the transactions. Let's see, if I am a car dealer or a car manufacturer, and there is a car distributor, and there is a servicing partner. All right, so I have a manufacturer, I have a distributor, and there is a service center in the servicing partner in one network. Okay, so I want to do a transaction of just sending car to the distributor. So I send that, do one transaction of sending one car to the distributor, or a lot of car to the distributor, and I complete that transaction, and that transaction doesn't go to the servicing partner. So the node who is related to the manufacturer and the node related to the distributor, they are the part of that transaction. and that is how the transaction flows. And notaries who is connected to the network, they do the consensus part. So notaries, for them, we have a separate node. Like if you understand Fabric, so there we have something called as orderers, right? So the orderers do the consensus part. So notaries here will check the double spending, or if the same kind of transaction has been done earlier, so that will be checked. So this is a simple, I mean, not a complicated at all in Corda. It's just point to point. So the network architecture of Corda is very simple rather than in Fabric. Any live example of blockchain in telecom? I don't have any live example, but I know that TRAI, that is Telecom Regulatory of Authority in India, they are going on to blockchain, and the transactions, that there is a problem of reconciliation in telecom sector. So TRAI is doing a blockchain, going to do it mandatory for the telecom companies to use this blockchain platform. So it is in talk. So I don't know any more information. I can't reveal any more information about that. Channels and private data collection. So there are no channels. So there are no channels in here, and there is no PDC. There, I mean, why do we have to? I mean, have private data, because as it is point to point, everybody is not getting information as it is. It is not globally broadcasted. So why will we have private data collection on top of having a point to point communication?
Yeah, so in Corda, basically you don't need channels or private data. What you do have is the network directory service, so you can do point-to-point communications.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's true. Because you don't need difference between states and vaults. So vault is difference between states. So vault contains the states. So states are held inside the vault. It's like uh, having a box, or it's like having a block. So in that block we have states. So in Corda it is called as something called as vault, or also, so yeah, so that is, and states are inside that vault. So states are the current state of your transactions or your transaction. So so that is, I mean, that is that. So type it in the chat about more questions. So before ending this, I would uh, like to inform you that we have our courses on indianblockchaininstitute.com. Please do visit our website, and please do there is a YouTube channel called Indian Blockchain Institute where we upload these webinars. And hi, hi. So this you can visit our website, that is indianblockchaininstitute.com. You could subscribe to our channel, that is Indian Blockchain Institute on YouTube, and see this recordings of this webinar there. All right. So, and if any query, you can mail us. This is our official mail ID. You can go to our website, or you can mail me. You can connect me with LinkedIn. Okay, I cannot share you the mail, but you can connect with me on this LinkedIn ID. All right. For any further information you need about the courses, about the Hyperledger, about Ethereum or Corda, we can discuss it later. All right. Let me see. Difference between Hyperledger Fabric and Corda. Okay. So Fabric and Corda. So the main difference is Hyperledger Fabric is based on blockchain, is a blockchain technology, and Corda is not a blockchain technology. It does not. It is basically working on graph-like structure. So it is connected point to point. It is peer-to-peer, but it's not point-to-point. Whereas Hyperledger Fabric involves global broadcasting. So there is a network architecture for Fabric. That is, we have endorsers, separate roles for endorsers, separate roles for ordering, separate committers. but in Corda, just we have something called as Notary tool for the consensus part, and the nodes which will commit the transaction, of course. And the consensus algorithms are kind of similar because Fabric also uses Raft, Corda also uses Raft. And Fabric is mostly nowadays, if I talk about current industry scenario, it is used for supply chain basically. I mean, mostly it is used for supply chain, and Corda is basically for financial, I mean, BFSI kind of thing. And yeah, so there are many differences in regarding Fabric and Corda. So if you want to discuss it more, you connect with me on LinkedIn. Okay, LinkedIn ID is SANKET right, or you can sorry, I can put it out here. Okay, dot right. So this is my mail ID, and this is my LinkedIn. So you can contact me here, and we can discuss further. All right. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you for joining, and please stay tuned. And we will. Okay, what are fixed simple connection that Fabric is not generated. All right, you have the answer there, Sudarshan. So Jim has answered your question, and thank you so much, Jim, for doing that. And I really appreciate it. And thank you so much, guys. Thank you for joining, and stay tuned. And I'll see you next time very soon with more. We will build a Cord app if if possible. Okay. So thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.
This is being something which is very astonishing to me that as per several studies and reports, only 5 to 10% of the people are actually employable. By that, what I mean is that only 5 to 10% of the working class or the working people have the right skill set to be employed. And this is one of the major hindrances leading to unemployability. And the only way to overcome is upskill yourself. With rising competition, upskilling has become one of the key priorities. And understanding this fact, IBI has come up with an exclusive program for the students, which we call it Blockchain plus Internship program. So this Blockchain plus Internship program will help you to learn in depth about blockchain technology, working on several projects, creating decentralized applications, along with an internship in Snapper Future Tech. So in this entire program, you're going to learn the entire product lifecycle development, what goes into enterprise grade applications and solutions and production. And this program is basically for students. This is about 2 to 3 months program, and it is a live instructor-led program. So any person from around the world can participate in this program, can sign up, and will also get an internship appointment letter with Snapper Future Tech. So you're going to work with the industry-leading faculties. You're going to get a lot of mentorship during the program, and also get a lot of hands-on experience to learn about creating your own product. So even if you're looking forward to be an entrepreneur, this is the right program for you, because you know what goes into the product development, what is the thought process, what kind of a business model you should think about, and most importantly, how is the product lifecycle development. You need to always hear your customers out. So this program is exclusively aimed at students, primarily freshers who are looking forward to land their dream job and build their career in the technology space. So blockchain is one of the most paid skills in demand. It's the number one skill in demand. It's the best time to learn blockchain. And this is only one of a kind industry program which will help you not only learn, but also get internship. So at the end of the program, you're going to be evaluated by your faculties and get an internship letter from Snapper Future Tech, which is one of the leading enterprise blockchain companies. So this program will cover Ethereum, Hyperledger, and also internships. So you're going to learn a lot about Ethereum, which is a public blockchain, Solidity, how to create decentralized application, create your own tokens, write your own smart contracts, along with Hyperledger ecosystem and how to create create a network. You are going to learn about Golang, Kubernetes, Dockers, and so on and so forth. So this is really exciting program. This program is exclusively for you. So please sign up, as we have limited seats available for this. Thank you so much and have a good day.